It all counts, family. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us again. We have an amazing episode today. A guy from my hometown, a phenomenal man, teacher, and leader, has done tremendous work in the communities and is relentless with it. Was a very intelligent man in high school. If I'm not mistaken, valedictorian. Is that correct, Doc?
Not quite valedictorian, but I was the top-ranked male. There were five.
There were
five sisters that were way smarter than me.
Okay, but it's all in the family, so it's all good. But it's Dr. Ian P. Buchanan. Doc, tell me about yourself.
Yeah, man. So, like you, born and raised in the city of East St. Louis, one of the most amazing things is, so just imagine, so in grad school, so my first semester in grad school, we were charged to read this book. It was called Savage Inequalities. And it was really about all of these school districts that were underserving students. And so the first chapter, this is what it says. It says, East St. Louis will be a scar of sorts, an ugly metaphor of chemicals and filth and effusions, a place for Black folks to die in, and a place for white people to pass by when they're traveling to St. Louis. So imagine that you in grad school, and this is the first book that you read. Now and so the man did this research in 1990. He finished his research in 90. And so he did all this research about East St. Louis, but that's what he said about us. But as we know, you and I know, we're the city of champions. We produce excellence, and that's what we do. And so it's just interesting how these different narratives around our community that other people embrace that we don't buy into. So yeah, man, so born and raised in East St. Louis, was blessed to have a really strong family background, was blessed to have educators in my life and in my family. As you know, my uncle was the principal of the high school. My aunt was an English teacher. Miss Edna Farmer was an English teacher at the high school. And so this excellence was it was just built in me. It was tattooed in me, to be very honest. And yeah, man, so I went off got a full academic scholarship to Mizzou, engineering full ride. Finished that, became an educator, man, and I've been an educator since the mid-90s.
And Doc, I noticed something, man. Now, you went to Mizzou and you got an engineering degree. As hard as that is, but you chose to go into education. Why'd you do that?
It's crazy, man. Like, I never would have thought it because, like, honestly, coming out of high school, my thing was, okay, if I get this engineering degree, I can have me a red drop-top Beamer with a few young ladies to, accommodate me, to accompany me. And so anyway, man, my fifth year in the engineering program, I got a chance to do a tutoring program, and I got a chance to work with 4 Black boys at the middle school level. Totally changed my life, man. I mean, totally changed my life. And it really helped me figure out what my gift was. I knew that my gift was education. And so I was like, you know what? I graduated from Mizzou in May, started grad school in June, and then the rest was history, man. And I think I was just born to be an educator. I think I was born to be a teacher, not an engineer. I went into engineering because, you're smart in math, be an engineer. And so that really wasn't the right career for me, even though I did enjoy the coursework.
And your uncle was a principal. How did you grade him? Because you were a principal. How did you grade him as a principal?
So man, there were two principals that really influenced me. Of course, my uncle, because my uncle was not just about excellence, but he was about community, and he was about family, and he was about excellence. And the thing about my uncle, man, was he was a person who gave second chances. He just passed a couple months ago. And if you talk to most people in our city, what people will say is, man, I remember when he caught me doing X. Or man, I remember when this happened and he gave me a second chance. And so I would give him an A+ because I really tried to model part of my work after him. But the other person that I tried to model myself after probably even more was Mr. Elliot McKinney, my Dunbar Elementary principal. And so one of the things that he instilled in us, man, he had this phrase, it was called, not the best, the very best. And if you run into any kid that I've ever touched, especially at the elementary level, if you come behind them and say, not the best, I guarantee you that they will say the very best. Because that was one thing that I tried to instill in my kids. And I looked at it like this. If I have a kid for 6 years and every day I tell him or her, you're not the best, you're the very best, what are they going to think about themselves? They're going to think that I am the very best. Yes. And so when they come against those obstacles, it's already a tape playing in their head. I'm not the best, I'm the very best, and I'm going to flourish and I'm going to succeed despite the obstacles. So yeah, man, I learned a lot from both of them, man, and I still really try to embody who they are today, especially my uncle. Bro, I drive Cadillacs and everything, just like my uncle did. So I definitely tried to be like him. You know, we're both in the same fraternity, so he really was a role model for me. And even, you know, he was really a father figure to me because I've been going to East St. Louis Lincoln basketball games before Jackie Joyner. You know, we're talking about Tina Hutchison, Oopie, Big Bird, T-Row, Ty Porter, Spanky Wilson, Ricky Slaughter, all of those people. I've been following Lincoln basketball and sports since I was probably 6 or 7 years old.
That's powerful, Doc. You said not the best, but the very best.
Not the best, but the very best. Absolutely.
So Doc, then how do you, or what do you feel, what obligation do you have as a principal when you say not the best, the very best? Because when you're talking our inner city communities, there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done to be better, and I'm not sure what our kids are not getting at home before they get to the school. So how do you instill that in them? Because it's one thing to say it, but how do they get there from K through 12 and then maintain it?
Yeah, so there's this concept, man, it's called the warm demander. And it's probably who you are. A warm demander is this. A warm demander will shower you with love, affection, all of those positive things, but they're going to demand the best out of you. And they're not going to accept anything outside of your best. And so for me, the type of principal that I tried to be, or the type of leader that I tried to be, was a warm demander. I'm going to put my arm around you. I'm going to hug you. But if you need that little kick, I'm going to give you that kick, and then I'm going to hug you again. And so my whole approach was to be a very no-nonsense, high standards father figure, but also shower you with the love that you may not get, especially from a man. And so for me, it was about hugging. I mean, that's at the elementary level. You know, it was about all of those types of things, because you got to shower these young people with love and not all of this demeaning talk, not all of that. And you got to celebrate the small successes, even if it's just you didn't have any issues in class today. And so I think part of it is encouragement, love, tough love, high expectations, and honestly, like my uncle, forgiveness. You got to forgive people and give people a second chance.
Yes. So, Doc, what made you write your book, King? What made you write it?
Yeah, man. So it's crazy. So I'm an engineer. I'm a mathematician by trade. I am not a writer by trade. But basically what happened, so I'm a big hip hop head and I'm a big Nas fan. So the crazy way that it happened is I was actually driving to a happy hour. There's about 40 younger black male leaders who were at this event. And so they invited me as the old head. So as I'm driving in, I hear Nas One Mic. I'm like, okay, let me just lock that in my head. But then when I walked into the room, I realized that this was one of the first times, and I'm sure you can relate to this. You remember being the youngster, then all of a sudden you the big unk?
Yes.
So I walked into the space and I realized, hold on for a second. These guys are 15, 20, 10 years younger than you. You are the unk now. So you have a very different responsibility. Mm-hmm. And so when I realized that, I was like, okay, so if I had one mic, what would I say? What would I do to try to inspire, encourage, influence, and impact not just the next level of leaders, but the current level of leaders?
And so, Coach, I'm going to do it for you, Doc. King, K for know the king within. I, inspire greatness in others for collective impact. N, navigate north. G, gravitate to great.
Yep.
So if I didn't read the book, what does all that mean?
Yeah, so when you think about what it takes to thrive as a leader, what I tried to do is surmise what it takes to thrive as a leader in 4 points. And so again, if you don't know yourself, then you can't be of service to anybody else. So that is the first thing. Man, know thyself. So that means know your strengths, know your weaknesses, know your superpowers, know your saboteurs, all of those things. So the first piece is know thyself. And then if you're really going to be a leader, you have to inspire people, not just for one victory and not just for individual success, but for collective impact. How can we make a big splash together? N is navigate to the north. Don't be running around in this world without values, without a North Star, without a couple things that keep you in bounds. You know what I'm saying? Have a set of values that you can live by. Have a set of principles that you can live by. And then the last one is gravitate to the great. Or you can say gravitate to the gangsters. So how do you have this cabinet, this dream team of people that will encourage, inspire, offer you critical feedback, be a shoulder to cry upon, be a voice, and also be a connector or a sponsor that they can help you tap into the next opportunity. And so that's really what it's about. And so in the book, I provide quotes that kind of align with each of those strategies. I tell a very personal story about my experience. And then I also give what they call king moves. So if you want to be a king, if you want to gravitate to the great, if you want to inspire a greatness in others, these are the king moves. These are the actual strategies, the actual tactics that you can use. And so I tried to make it very easy to read. I tell people all of the time, if you jump on a plane or jump on a train, this is a super easy read that will keep you engaged. And so I tried to make it short and sweet, but I tried to pack it with a whole lot of content so brothers can read. Because all the time, we're not really reading.
Doc, you a teacher, you a principal. I have to ask you this question. Do you think the American school system is broken or outdated?
The traditional school system,
Yeah.
absolutely, yes. So the Leave It to Beaver kind of vibe is dead. Yeah, Leave It to Beaver is dead. And you have to think that the school system was designed on the principles of the industrial age. So we're talking about 1920, when they wanted people to sit in desks, not to really think, just to act, to raise your hand when you want to talk. And it was this very didactic, vanilla way of doing things. 2024, our kids got Instagram, they got their cell phones, they got microwaves, their attention span is shorter. So the 2024 kid needs something very different than the 1970, 1920. Even in our generation, they need something different. And so we have to make sure that our teaching methodologies and our teaching styles match the need of this current generation. And so no, that old stuff don't work, man. You're not gonna hold no kids' attention by just talking at them for 10 or 15 minutes. They're gonna check out. And so we have to engage kids in a very different way. And there are some very practical ways to do that.
So what's some examples? Doc, do you think 5 days a week is still relevant, or should 4 days a week? I mean, go year round. What do you think?
That's a good question. It's a whole lot of research being done on that right now. And there are a whole lot of school districts that are actually rethinking or refiguring the way that they do school. And so, yes, I do believe that we need to restructure the school year. The one is teaching is not brain science, it's much harder. And so to be an excellent teacher, you need time to not just kind of learn what you need to teach, but you also need time to do what we call internalizing. So understanding and being able to do it without necessarily holding a script or holding a book. You need time to analyze data. You need time to do all of these different things. So in my opinion, we should think about extending the school year and perhaps either having 4 days a week, or like some school districts do, they might have like 6 weeks on, two weeks off. And that is good because, especially nowadays, especially post-COVID, hey man, there are so many people who are having social emotional challenges, having stressors, whether we're talking about kids or we're talking about teachers. And so it's so important that we give people space and time to actually deal with all of the stuff. Teaching is a high pressure job. But the other thing, which is even more important, Zoe, is that over the summer, kids experience what they call summer loss.
Yes.
And so what happens is basically their academics kind of go backwards. And so we have to restart and sometimes reteach. It might take a quarter or 5 weeks to teach all of the stuff that they forgot over the summer. And so in order to address this summer learning loss, we need to think about extended school year. It doesn't have to be traditional. It can be all authentic learning experience. It could be all field trips. It can be
Yes.
something else. It can be projects. But we need to make sure that the learning goes on continuously because our kids lost a lot during COVID. And so they lost a lot during COVID they have not recuperated from. And if we do those where they taking the whole summers off, then they really are continuing to go backwards. And I'll tell you this, man, I've heard it said by a civil rights leader, if white America is sick, black America has pneumonia. And so COVID was pneumonia for us. Yeah, COVID was pneumonia for us, man. And we have to get back. And not only academically, but in the social emotional aspect as well. Hey man, our kids are struggling, our teachers are struggling. It's tough. It's a tough job. It's a tough job.
Whew, Doc, you hit me in the chest with all that, man.
And I say this though real quick, and I'm not painting it with a broad brush because there are always nuances and differences.
Yes.
But for the most part, if you talk to 100 teachers right now, especially in our communities, it's rough.
Wow.
And I have the ultimate respect for people in the classroom.
Yes. And Doc, when you were a principal, what unique challenges as a black man did you face when you were incorporated into the school systems?
Yeah, depending on the system, sometimes in systems that are more, I'll talk about my experiences in more of the urban communities. Um, Part of it is sometimes we bring so many challenges to the table that make it difficult to even for kids to even access the educational process. And so one of the things we have to do, and I keep talking about this mental and this social emotional piece, but one of the things we have to do is make sure that our kids are well.
Yes.
And so when you're trying to make sure that your kids are well sometimes, then that may mean that you may have less time to actually teach some of the core academic stuff. So you got to try to find a balance between the head and the heart and the soul. So I think one of the challenges that we face is really trying to balance all of that to serve the needs of our kids. That's one. I think the other one sometimes was staffing. Sometimes it's a challenge for folks to come and stay. When they're in these very challenging environments, man. And I think those are really a couple of the main things. I think, social emotional stuff was going on. Sometimes talent is an issue or retention is an issue. But the worst part, man, I'm not going to lie to you. The worst part of being an educator in urban America is the number of funerals and wakes you have to go to. I cannot tell you how many funerals either I've had to go to or I had to speak at it's either the kids or their parents or their siblings, and so having to be a presence and having to absorb all of that pain on behalf of the kids in the school, on behalf of the families, and even on behalf of myself is the most difficult thing about being in the world that we're in, man. Those funerals and those wakes, man, they tear you up, bro. I'd have been to too many of those. You turn on the TV and you're worried that one of your kids is going to be on the news. All of those things impact you on a daily.
Doc, I was going to ask you too this question and just kind of follow up on it. How do you bring or how do you incorporate parents and community within your school system to create that level of support? Because what you also see, when a kid goes to school that didn't get a meal at home, maybe not all cases, I don't make it seem like that, but
Right.
or in the summertime, one meal when the programs aren't there, where do I get food from? So how do you incorporate that? Because I think though you're a principal, you're more than that in those communities.
Oh yeah. I never saw myself as just a principal. I always saw myself as an institution within a community. And so as an institution, we have an obligation to be more than just the providers of academics. We have because these are our kids.
Yeah.
Like you just not my I don't care just about your math performance and your literacy performance. I care about you as a human being. And so for us, it means that we have to attend to the whole child. So if that means that we gotta make sure your clothes are washed and ironed, if we have to make sure that the parents get what they need, that is our job. That is our obligation. And for me, I always said, to whom much is given, much is required. So me and you, we know we're not even supposed to be here. We're not even supposed to be here based on what the statistics say. But we, you and I and others like us, somebody saw something special in us. We had a special talent, and then our family and the community was behind us 100%. They're going to look out for you because they see something special in you. And so for me, because all of these people poured into me, whether we're talking about Corey League baseball and my baseball coach, Mr. Turner, whether we're talking about, teachers, whether we're talking about family, whether we're talking about religious institutions, all of those things play a part. And so now that some of those things may not be as present as they used to be, then as schools, we got to stand in the gap. I mean, we don't have to, but I have to.
Doc, why do we, and for those that don't know, East St. Louis is known as the city of champions. There are a lot of championships, a lot of phenomenal performers, athletes. But why do we put so much stock in our communities on sport as opposed to the academic piece?
It's so interesting because I think it might have been, I don't know if it was your senior year or not, but I remember when Mr. Bailey was interviewed at State, and they said, you know what video I'm talking about? Like he put them in there, he put them in their place. Yes. They just want to focus on basketball. He's like, no, we got the number one debate team in the state.
Yes.
We have the number one jazz band in the state, R.I.P. Ron Carter.
Yes.
We have, when I went to Mizzou, 5 of my friends went on academic scholarships.
Amen.
So I think that it's the narrative that we can change.
Yes.
We can change that. We don't just have to be, we can be the city of champions, but we can be the city of musical champions, academic champions, social impact champions, athletic champions. So I think we can broaden the definition. But I think that's why most people know us. And sports rally communities. Bro, how it was in the stands at Lincoln. When you look in the stands as a hooper, you see the whole East St. Louis that's supporting Zoe. You know how that goes. Yep.
That's big time there.
Absolutely.
Doc, what role, meaning the principal, and I'm just talking in areas I grew up in and areas I spent a lot of time recruiting in most areas, but I always feel like the principal, the superintendent of schools, the mayor in that community, don't you feel like they need to be partners and on the same page? And it just my 2 cents, my experience in recruiting those areas. What do you think about that?
I think they definitely need to be on the same page. I think, man, part of this, man, is power and ego. Power, ego, and money. And so when you got those issues in place sometimes, then you don't have the collaboration that you need. If my ego means that I got to be the top dog, I got to be the most visible one, or you might be, so I think those things can stand in the way sometimes, but absolutely, we all do need to be working in lockstep. However, if I'm an expert in education, don't try to tell me, what I need to do. Obviously, you're going to have some input, but there's some things, some nuances about education that you may not know. Just like you as a coach, you're going to always have the critic on the side, and they have no idea about some of the challenges, some of the stuff that's underneath. And so don't try to come and tell me what to do, how to be a principal. If you the mayor, you can have some input, but you can't tell me what to do. Yes. So, but I think they all do need to be working together. Absolutely, bro. For the benefit of the kids, because a lot of times we put the adults in the center, but instead we should always be thinking about how do we make sure that the kids are in the center. Not just the kids, but what we call the outrageous love kid. The outrageous love kid is a kid who is the most underserved, under-resourced, underprepared, probably neglected. And so we need to center not just on kids, but they need they don't just need regular love. They need outrageous love. And so we have to be very thoughtful about putting those kids in the center. Because if we don't, in St. Louis, they got this big thing, the Kia boys. All these guys are just stealing all these doggone Kia cars. So if we don't educate them, the Kia boys are going to be stealing your car, even if you don't have a Kia. And so we have to educate them now, because if we don't, we're going to incarcerate them later on.
Wow. Doc, one of the things I thought now, Mr. Bailey and all the principals, yourself and all the principals that you've had a relationship and you've been around, do you guys individually or come together as a team and say, okay, we have, like say East St. Louis Lincoln, we have 300 seniors this year. Next year we have 240. Next year we have 275. Is there a plan to say every kid needs to be in somebody's college, community school, trade school, we got to make sure none of these kids are left behind, meaning on the streets? Now, again, you can't save them all, but is there a mission to do that? And do you have statistics to say, well, 16 of them didn't make it, but here's where they are? I mean, those when you're in those communities.
Yeah. So there's a level of accountability for every kid that graduates from our high schools. There's a way, especially in Missouri at least, where we track where a kid goes after they come out of college, and we have and not only that, I mean, when they graduate from high school, not only that, but it affects how we are graded as a school district. And so if your kids are coming out of post-secondary and they don't really have any plans, and that's kind of a ding against you as a school district. And so that's making us be more deliberate about making sure that kids have a plan. Employment, so a job that provides a living wage. So you go directly out and get a job that provides a living wage. That could be military, so enlisting, or that can be further education. And so we have to make sure that we focus on making sure that a kid has a path to at least one of those. And one of the things that's happening now is you see, and we all see, we have so many kids now who are coming out of high school with either these technical certifications, whether we're talking about mechanics, whether we're talking about some of the plumbing and those kinds of things. But we're also seeing so many more kids who are coming out of high school with associate's degrees. And so that is really good because it's a money saver.
Good. Yes.
So when I'm starting school, I'm saving more money because I already got basically 60 credit hours under my belt. And I can kind of start at a head start, and I don't have to move at such a quick pace. So I can be a 17 or 18-year-old college junior. Wow. And so I think those things work as well.
That's very helpful. Now, Doc, this is one that I've struggled with when it came about with the removal of affirmative action in the college admissions process. How will that impact people, Black people, people of color?
Yeah, man. So one of the things that we know, even if we look at the news today and we think about, the toxic energy some of our politicians have brought to the table. As Kanye West says, racism's still alive. They just be concealing it. And so this racism thing is still real. And so if we don't have policies and practices that at least help us get our foot in the door, because people are not going to be morally inspired to give us an opportunity. And so we have to make them do it legislatively. And so if we don't have legislation that at least allows us to get in the game, to put our foot in the door, then we will not get in the door, because racism and prejudice are real, whether it is acknowledged or not. We all have biases. And so if we don't have these things like affirmative action, that's how I was able to get a full academic ride to Mizzou, because there was a program that was specifically set aside for Black students. And there were a number of people from our high school that went under the same, George Brooks Scholarship. So we have to have these programs. If we don't, we are going to be, we might even almost disappear, man, in some of these organizations and institutions. Or they'll just have one or two tokens that they can manipulate.
Doctor, piggyback off that, standardized testing.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on it?
I'm glad that many colleges and universities are being either, test optional, test blind.
Yes.
I think it's a good thing. I think it is one of the factors that has kept many of us out of institutions of higher ed. And we know that it predicts very little. It doesn't really predict anything. And we also know that the more access you have to resources,
Yes.
you can pay $20,000 and do ACT prep for a year. And then your kid comes out with a 30, and this dude in the hood comes out with a 19, and he's not smarter than you, the guy that got the 30 something. He's just has had more training. He's learned how to game the system and finesse the system. I teach people how to succeed on the ACT. And so I know it's all about finesse and game. It's not necessarily about what you know. It is about, can you figure out the strategy to thrive on this test? The same way kids figure out strategies for video games. You have to figure out the strategy, the hack, and then you can knock it out.
Now, Doc, I'll give you a story, and I have you on the show, and you're doing a phenomenal job, so I don't want to take up all your shine.
No, man, it's
but
conversation.
when I came out of high school, I took the ACT the last 2 times, and at that time, as you know, as an athlete, you had to get an 18 to qualify.
Mm-hmm.
I took it maybe, I think, like in March or somewhere around, and I took it in June and got 2 17s, so I had to go to prep school. So now, but here's the thing, Doc. This is so I had to go to prep school. So I'm on the prep school's campus in September. So my senior year, so I'm on the prep school campus in September. I take the SAT, I think, and I make like a 960 or somewhere around that, and so I passed it. Now you're not even talking about a calendar year or 2 years. So from the last time I took the ACT was in June. October, November, when I took it, I passed it because they prepared me on how to study for it.
Exactly.
And so,
exactly.
And I sit back and but I was, at that time, I was so happy to pass. I didn't think what I think now as a man and as a coach and as a leader. But then my wife and I, we start talking about it more. Then we've been blessed to put our kids in situations where we can pay for them to get the toolage to understand, okay, go to Dr. Buchanan, he'll help you with your prepare for it, and they get great scores. It doesn't mean they're better than that kid in the inner city area. They just had access to the behind the scenes footage. And it just, those are the things that I think with universities, and I would always talk to administrative people in subtle ways, not disrespectful, but just to say, when they would question the kid if can he do the work here? It's like, yeah, he can do the work because he's a fighter. He can do the work because he's a workhorse. He gonna outwork the competition. Now, he might not graduate with a 3.0, but he's gonna outwork the competition. And then the other thing is, I think what they take for granted on college campuses, those athletes are going to the same classes in the same buildings as regular students. It's not like they got a separate building just for athletes. And then I got 4 hours of work I got to do on the court, on my field. And I'm getting back off the road at 2 o'clock in the morning, and coach said I got to be in class at 8. So all those demands, and those guys are walking away with degrees. And then you look at the statistics, athletes are graduating at a higher rate than regular students. So I'm glad that universities have done away with that, so to speak, and given students the opportunity to be successful.
You know, man, one thing that the ACT or the SAT cannot measure is something that you just kind of alluded to. And that's tenacity, that's grit, that's will to win, that's the competitive piece. Like, I'm not going to lose. Like, and honestly, I wasn't as academically prepared as some of the kids who went to the more affluent schools in our area, but they didn't have that killer like me. They didn't have that killer like me. They didn't have that I'm going to make it by any means, because my teachers and my family told me that I'm going to be successful no matter what. And so even though I was underprepared, I figured out how to make it happen. And I think that's one of the things that you cannot measure. And you know this as a coach. You could be the best pure shooter that you want to be, but if you ain't got no guts, if you ain't got no oomph, if you ain't going to be in the gym while everybody else is at home, then you're not going to thrive. You're not going to be the one. And anybody knows me. I tell principals all the time. I tell principals, nobody should ever, 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 ever beat you to work. You should be opening the doors before the custodians, because you gotta put in that work.
So, Doc, when you were a principal, what were your thoughts on HBCUs or PWIs when they was choosing schools? Not your own children, but other students.
Yeah, at the time for me, I didn't really understand some of the implications. And so for me, it was really about what's the best financial package for you.
Okay, great. Yes.
But now that I'm older, and especially all of the challenges that I had in Mizzou around racism,
Mm,
I think it's so important that we provide our kids with environments where they can thrive.
mm,
I definitely see the value in HBCUs. I mean, I sent my daughter to an HBCU, and I believe in HBCUs, and I think that it does something to um, the. I mean, it's a community.
mm,
It's a work ethic. You see excellence, where some of these PWIs many times we feel out of place,
mm.
especially like in engineering programs. There was only a handful of us in my program. And so you don't feel that camaraderie, that love, that support sometimes. So if I had my choice, I'd probably send all of us to HBCUs. I probably would, man. I'm not gonna even lie. Now, grad school is a little different.
Okay.
You know, I would definitely say for grad school, I would open up the
Okay.
options up.
Yes.
But for undergrad, for the foundation, I'm all about the HBCU
I
life.
like that. We went all options for my daughter, and certainly HBCUs are probably at the top choice right now. It's we will allow her to make the decision, but we will nudge her in the areas we need to. But I Doc, I think, and we both went to the same high school. I think
Yep.
growing up in East St. Louis, and just my 2 cents, I felt like the teachers, even the coaches, it was like it was all family. They poured into you, and they were teaching you life lessons, even though they teaching in class, but they teaching life lessons. So you got that all the way through. Uh, I'm not sure if those lessons are being taught in schools in the inner city areas nowadays. It's almost like it's more, and I'm talking in terms of ones I go into because I've been into them, recruiting and
Yep.
all. I think it's more survival than anything. And again, the teachers have a tough job, but what makes their jobs tougher today than when we grew up? Because we still grew up in East St. Louis. So what makes the jobs tougher today than they were when we were growing up?
Yeah, I think that for one, we didn't necessarily have schools didn't necessarily have the pressure of standardized testing.
Okay.
And so now, parents are deciding where they want to move to,
Mm,
all of those kinds of things based on how a school or a school district is graded.
okay.
And so I think this pressure of the standardized tests is one of the things that can cause extra stress and cause us to be more focused on perhaps some of the academic stuff versus some of the building your humanity
Yes.
stuff, the stuff that we were taught. So I think that's one thing. I also think that teaching has become, because of some of the pressures, teaching has become more of a technically challenging job from my perspective.
Mm,
The techniques that it takes to actually deliver high quality instruction have really raised because there's a different level of accountability. Um, so I think repeat the question to me one more time, man. I want to make sure I'm answering your question.
uh, basically, and it wasn't so much a question, just kind of throwing it out there to you, meaning how
Yeah,
we came up. They were teaching in class. They were teaching Black history. They were teaching life history. They were teaching Black history, whatever class they taught. But it was
right,
all that.
exactly right.
It was almost like I'm teaching you as you my child, educating you so you can go off and be better in this world and get ready for
Yep,
society.
yep,
As opposed to now, when I go into schools, and it's almost as if it's just the teachers. Again, they qualified, but like we just got to survive the day. It's a lot of chaos going on.
yeah, yeah. I think just in general, man, society has changed. It's
Mm,
become more challenging. I mean, you got to think about it. We didn't have school shootings when we were growing up. I mean, not in a school. You just got people just mass murdering. We didn't have some of those challenges when we were growing up. Um, I think now I think the level of stress and pressure and social emotional issues and grief and um, all of those things are compacted onto families and onto communities. And so I feel like that makes the job more difficult. And I honestly do believe that a teacher's job now may be more difficult than it was when we were growing up.
okay,
I
I
do
believe
I do
that.
believe that.
I believe that too.
Um, and I think that the farther that we get away from our roots as Black and Brown people, um, the less we see ourselves as teachers whose job is to build and support and nurture the whole child.
Mm.
Yeah. It's not just about your grades.
Hey, Doc, I want to say, so I just want you to hear me out and you answer
Yep.
how you will. I'm going to just pick some East St. Louis kids come from Detroit, predominantly black high schools. I'm going to say Baltimore, Oakland, you name it. Area in Compton in L.A.
Yeah.
And 90%, almost some cases 100% of teachers are black, and they teaching them.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers went to universities all over the country, so they qualified to teach.
Yep.
But for the most part, the academics don't line up with somebody that went to a school in Beverly Hills or Palm Springs. So why is that? Because they all qualified teachers as far as they got the degrees. Where's the disparity in that?
Ooh, if we can figure that one out, we'd all be winning. But this is what I will say. Let's just talk about student performance, not necessarily ACT or SAT, but if we just talk about student performance, there's a connection between income and performance.
Yes, now we're talking.
Yeah. So no matter how good a teachers may be in an all black environment, there are some issues sometimes related to economy, family income that can predict, or at least partially predict, a student's success. And so I think that if we just notice trends in Missouri and California and Texas, if you just line up school districts from the lowest socioeconomic to the highest, and then also connect test scores, you'll see a direct correlation. And so I think part of it is that. That's not the whole thing, but I think part of it is that. And that's just something that, again, is, in my opinion, a manifestation of institutional racism. And you got to think about it, man. I mean, in terms of health statistics, in terms of income, in terms of educational attainment, it's all along lines of either race or class, period. The black female death rate for their children is higher. The incidence of cancer in our communities are higher. The incidence of social emotional issues are higher. All of these things, man, are heavy on us. And again, it's not to make excuses, but it's to share some realities. So I'm in probably about 80 classrooms a year, all across the country. And some of the things that I see in different schools based on income is very different. And so if a kid comes in and hasn't been fed, or didn't sleep well last night, they're not going to necessarily be ready for learning. Whereas a kid who may have had some different conditions might come in ready. We don't know. And again, COVID has been such an impact on everything. It's a whole new day. It's a whole new day, man. It's a whole new day. Mm. Yep, it's a whole new day.
Yeah. Man. Doc, you call yourself an edupreneur. Yep. Talk to me, Doc.
Yeah, man. Edupreneur. I'm an educator at my core. And I think, shout out to my little sister and my little brother. So I think I'm an educator because they were 11 and 15 years younger than me. Okay. And so I had to be a nurturer. I had to be a supporter. I was a big brother, but I was also, a prominent figure. And so that's really what made me become an educator. And so I've been an educator to my core. So that's the edu part. I'm an educator, but an entrepreneur. I work solo, man. Not solo, but I work for me. I walked away from a job making 6 figures and just quit to do my own thing.
Amen.
Because I bet on myself and I believe in me, and I know that I can make a bigger impact outside of the system versus inside the system. So educator at the core, that's who I am. Entrepreneur is who I am as well. Because I got to live. I want a luxurious life. So I got to be a hustler too. You know, the hustler is in us.
Mm.
So it's just, as a matter of fact, you might even know this. The name of my Corey League baseball team was the
Oh
Hustler. So
yeah, it
I've been a
was.
hustler
Oh
since I
yeah,
was probably about 8 or 9 years old.
y'all were good too. NIA Education Group. Tell us about it.
Yep. Yeah. So NIA is a Kiswahili term for purpose. And so we are a purpose driven organization designed to help great leaders become their greatest leadership selves. And we do that in a couple different ways. We do that by executive coaching. And so I coach around 30 leaders across the country. We do that by providing professional learning, professional development to teachers. We do that by doing my leadership training around my book and doing a little bit of HR work as well. And so we pretty much are a full service education organization that is designed to change the world. Um, I'm a big Tupac fan. I may not change the world, but I guarantee you I will touch the brain of the one who will. That's my mantra. I may not
I
change
like
the
that.
world, but I know at some shape, form, or fashion, I'm going to touch somebody who's going to change. It might be somebody listening to this podcast. Who knows? And we also have this thing we call the Million Minds Movement. So our goal is to touch 1 million minds over the course of this business. And so that really is what drives me. And the last thing is we want to exemplify excellence, professional service, and results. And so it's an opportunity for me to kind of live out some of the things that I've learned over the course of my career, and then to also just be a different type of help. I'm in the uncle season now. So in the uncle season, you got to be a little different. You got to be an unk. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
I like that, Doc. So, Doc, in our community, especially those, I guess one would call low-income communities, we need support. We need a lot of love. We need respect amongst each other.
Yep.
Appreciation for what our teachers do, because they do work extremely hard.
Yep.
We need to continue to grow and get better. And we need to lean on each other. Is that fair to say?
I think absolutely. I think the other part we need though is grace. We need grace, man. We need to give educators grace because they're not going to be perfect. They're going to make some mistakes. They are real people who have real lives, who have real challenges. So we got to give our teachers and our educators grace. We got to give our kids grace. We got to give our families grace. You're never going to hear me say, well, if them parents would just do this, or if the parent, no, I'm not going to indict our parents like that. I'm not going to indict our parents like that because that's not my job. My job is to do what I do, not to criticize parents. And so that's not the approach that I take. And so that's why I give people grace. Of course, I'm going to have high expectations for everybody who comes across my path. But I'm also going to give you a certain level of grace, which again is one of the things that I learned from my Uncle Buchanan. He gave me so many second and third chances. He caught me skipping school. He caught me doing all of that. And many of my friends, probably including Conzo Martin, who knows? Well, maybe Dale. I don't know how so, but maybe Dale. But he was a man of grace. And so I learned that from him, man. And I'm a spiritual person too. And so I know the importance of grace, man.
Yeah, so we got to give grace. It all counts, family. Another phenomenal episode with Dr. Ian Buchanan. And remember to like, share, and subscribe. It all counts. Take care.